This is the MGTOW Infinium here with another Infinium short take. This Infinium short take is entitled When Freedom is Perverse. My brothers, every day which I live as a MGTOW, I am further convinced of the profound nature of the freedom that the philosophy affords me. At the same time, I can see why we as MGTOW men are roundly condemned for adopting a philosophy which frees us in so many ways. My brothers, essentially, because I don't have a woman in my life and I don't have to deal with the machinations of having a woman in my life, I am free to pursue hobbies and interests that I could not do had I had a woman in my life. For instance, I have a hobby called rail fanning, and rail fanning is basically looking at trains. But I have a deep interest in all types of trains, ranging from freight trains, commuter rail, subway systems, all types of things. But again, that hobby is rail fanning. I have a hobby that deals with aviation, so I'm interested in all types of aviation types of things like planes, avionics, military aircraft, commuter aircraft, all types of things. I have a hobby in electronics, which actually it's more so used for business, used for all types of things. It's used in my work, but I have a hobby in electronics. And as you all may be aware of, I have a hobby in communication. So I am a ham radio operator, and I intend to get all of my licenses plus some other licenses which are related to communications. I have a hobby that deals with aquariums, and I also intend to take that hobby and try to build a business dealing with aquaponics and try to do something in terms of aquaponics farming. And aquaponics is basically where you have a system which has fish in it, but it also is growing plants hydroponic wise using a non-soil based way of growing plants. I have a hobby as well as a business use with photography as well as video. And with that hobby, I have been doing both photography as well as video, both for personal use, for content work, and again, for personal work. I have a hobby in astronomy. So I have very great interests in astronomy, space flight, all those types of things. And lastly, I like to invest. And I like to invest not only in the stock market, but sometimes I do crypto. And I've been looking at doing some land investing, all types of things. My brothers, I can do the aforementioned because my mind as well as my heart are not centered around a woman, but it is centered around putting myself first. This means that everything from my interests to my well-being are first and foremost in my life. But my brothers, when it comes to womanness in the feminist plantation state, my freedom as a MGTOW would be considered to be perverse. Mainly because freedom as a MGTOW prevents me from doing my duty as a slave to the feminist plantation state. As a result, I, as a MGTOW man, is nothing more than a perverse freak of nature in terms of the feminist plantation state. And along with being perverse, I carry a dangerous contagion within my being as a man called true freedom. This is another reason why MGTOW men are considered to be dangerous, because again, their freedom is considered to be perverse to the FPS. And my brothers, there are many reasons because of your perverse nature in terms of the FPS that you are condemned. For instance, you can be condemned as being gay, or you can be condemned as being somebody that has an avoidant personality disorder. So basically, you have something psychologically wrong with you. You can be condemned as being childish because you have a hobby such as mine with rail fanning or building a model rail set, whatever. You can be condemned as childish, all types of things. And also, in certain senses, you can have the Bible thrown at you in a way which is out of context, which, for instance, there is a scripture in 1 Corinthians 13:11 which talks about when you were a child, you did childish things, but when you are grown up, you do adult things. You can have those things thrown at you, again, because of your perverse nature as a MGTOW and being a free man as a MGTOW. My brothers, all this occurs because you, as MGTOW men, have chosen to remove women as a priority in your life, thereby making yourself the priority. So, my brothers, your perverse nature is because of your freedom and how you live your life. And that is, again, without women being the priority in your life. So, for instance, when these things come along where, for instance, these womanists do this infiltration move into the manosphere, so to speak, and they come back and say that MGTOW men are evil and perverse, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about the perverse nature of your freedom. And it's solely because you will not do your duty as a man and serve in the slave pits of the feminist plantation state by marrying women, by marrying single mothers, blah, blah, blah. That's why you are condemned as perverse by the feminist plantation state. And it is also why, my brothers, you are condemned for having a hobby which is satisfying to you as well as bringing you contentment. So, for instance, one day I was sitting in a lunchroom in one of my workplaces a few years back, I'd say about 7 years back, and the discussion got on to hobbies and what we like to do in our free time. And unfortunately for me, I brought up the fact that I like to rail fan, at which point the whole lunchroom burst out into laughter at me, and from that point on, I never heard the end of it. I did learn a lesson that I would no longer tell publicly what I do to people that don't understand the community of rail fanners or whatever, but to tell people personally in a setting like that of any type of hobby or anything like that I'm doing, because it will only result in that type of thing happening, that type of shaming, that type of put down that I got. But even at that point, it was solely due to me doing something that was antecedent to the feminist plantation state. If you look online, basically, you will find that there's a great community of men as well as some women who rail fan. But nevertheless, when that hobby is centered in my life or takes precedence over me being with a woman, it is something that is perverse to the feminist plantation state. What I'm getting at, my brothers, is the profound nature of the MGTOW philosophy. And look at what the feminist plantation state or womanists are asking of us. They're asking of us to be slaves. And I can assume that if this situation in the Ukraine gets any worse and the U.S. gets further pulled up into it, and we have to send more and more troops over there, and we end up in a war, unfortunately, with Russia, we men will be expected to do our duty. So that's what I'm talking about, my brothers. It is the do your duty, I'm doing my part type of thing that the MGTOW philosophy negates, because it shows you it is not your responsibility to do your duty. It is not your responsibility to be a slave. Your only responsibility and duty is to put yourself first and to live free as you should be, as you are entitled to as a man. That's your only duty, and that's your only responsibility. Any other priority for you as a MGTOW man is rescinded. This is the MGTOW Infinium, and this has been an Infinium short take. My MGTOW brothers, as always, stay safe, stay strong, stay on the MGTOW path, and remember, MGTOW is the liberation of men's minds. MGTOW cannot and will not be stopped.